Hello, everybody. I'm George Williams. I'm the X Search Catalog Coordinator at Northeast Kansas Library System in Lawrence, Kansas.
I'm Christopher Brannon with the Coeur d'Alene Public Library and the Cooperative Information Network.
And today we're going to start talking probably a three-part set of videos about patron validation, how to set up validation to make sure that fields are being filled in properly when you're creating or editing patrons. We are a part of the education committee of koha-US, and you can find our website at koha-us.org. And if you go to the koha-us.org website and scroll down on this first page, you can get access to all of the video recordings, all of the slides that have been given to us from all of the presentations for all 4 days of KohaCon 22. Most of you'll find the title, the name of the presenter, links to all the video recordings. And if there are slides available, you'll see a little red, or I guess it's kind of a greenish yellowish icon over here for the presentations that we have slides for, or extra content for beyond just the video recordings. So, and again, you can find all of that at koha-us.org. So be sure to go look at that. And while you're there, if you go to the Learn page and go to video playlists, that's where you'll find all of our videos from this training series that we've been doing for over 2 years now. So there's a lot of stuff here. We are currently in season 3, but there's also season 1, season 2. There's links out to Bywater Solutions Monday Minutes, links out to Deep Dive by Bywater Solutions. We need to get some of those other things in there, because there were some good video. There was one presentation at KohaCon about I don't remember the name of it, but there was somebody in Asia that's doing some good, cool Koha videos. So we'll try and get a link to that on there too.
Yeah.
Christopher is going to do the bulk of the work on talking about validation. I guess I've got one more thing to say about the Koha conference. If you came to the Koha conference and you haven't done it yet, go to this link. There's a QR code here, scan it, go to the link and fill out the survey and tell us how you liked KohaCon. If you didn't go watch all the videos and then send us, watch them all in one go, start to finish, get a big bowl of popcorn, watch them all and let us know how we did at that link there. So
I think the thing that surprises me in that, and you were commenting on that before we started recording, was, people commenting about why we didn't do this or why this or whatever. And, really, it all comes down to people's involvement in the conference and planning. You can submit a request to be a host location. If you don't like the locations, put your place up for bid as hosting the conference location. Or if you don't like a topic, or you're wondering why something wasn't included and you think it should be, submit a proposal for a presentation. We would love to have more people present their thoughts on how they're using Koha, and really that's what we want. So if you find something lacking, please participate and add to it.
Yeah, the way that the Koha-US conference location is chosen is it's voted on by the Koha-US members. So if you want to come to the Koha-US conference next year and you want it to be someplace that you want to go, if you want it to be at your library, submit a proposal. That'll be information available on the koha-us.org on our website. It seems like we usually do the voting for locations, and we're in October right now, but it's going to be January, February when we start thinking of where we're going to be having our conference in August or September next year. January is when we're going to start asking people if you want to host this, send in a proposal. So if you want to have koha-US conference at your library, it's not that far off when you're going to have to come up with a proposal. So and the easiest way to find out more information is to come to a koha-US meeting. They're the second Wednesday of every month. The way you find out is you go all the way to the bottom of the page, and here's our upcoming events for our calendar. We have a meeting on, the next meeting will be October 12th at 10:30 a.m., but it's always the second Wednesday of the month at 10:30 Central, which is 11:30 Eastern, 9:30 Mountain, and 8:30 Pacific.
Yeah. So come join us.
Yeah.
Be a part of things. Help shape koha-US and the conferences and the direction.
It's fun. It's fun. You get to meet weird, interesting, stupid people like me and Christopher.
I'm glad you finished that off the way you did. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started here. So we're going to talk about patron validation for 2 or 3 episodes here. And the goal of this, Koha has slowly evolved over the years and has learned how to improve things along the way. But one thing that we've been doing since we got started back in 2012, I believe, is we've slowly added bits and pieces to jQuery to improve patron validation. One of the things that we kept running into was, staff would enter things slightly different, or there would be mistakes made. And so we're working to improve patron data entry so that that information is more consistent, and we don't have to go back and clean up stuff if there's mistakes made, and we have functionality that depends on things being entered correctly. It's not going to break it. So having that consistently correct information entered into the patron fields is critical, especially things like, if you can stick a space in a patron field, how much is that going to throw off searches and
complicates sorting, that's for sure.
Yes, exactly. So, consistency is really important. So I've found some information out long ago, and I can't remember the original source, but long ago I found some validation code, and we have tweaked it over the years. I've had to make modifications through various upgrades in Koha, and I'll point one of those out in today's episode. But we've had to make modifications as Koha has evolved over the years. So we've maintained this code, and we'll keep this up in the library for everybody to get to.
So I'm looking here. I remember I was using this. I'm not currently using patron validation at my current job, but I did use it the last job, and I just did a quick look. And there is on the Koha wiki in the jQuery library, there is an old set of validation rules from Paul Landers at Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center. And I know that that's where I base the stuff that I used to do with validation.
That may be where I base it off of.
I think it is, because I think we talked about it at the time.
And I'll refer to that original code in our notes. We'll link to that. But since that was posted, there have been some changes, especially with the button, the save button that we're on. So
when I look at it, it says here Paul Landers version 3.12. So that was like probably 2014, maybe 2013. It was a while ago.
So we'll go ahead and get
lots changed since then.
Yes.
So what
All right.
exactly does validation do? How does it help us?
So validation ensures that information is consistently entered, so that, if, we've had some staff that enter last names in all uppercase, screaming at you. We've had we've had patron names that had spaces in the wrong places. We've had just a plethora of things that we needed to tweak and make sure we're more consistent. So I'm just we're going to start off today by showing the basic structure of how we shape validation, and then, show how easy it is to add to that as needs arise. First of all, there is some validation that is at work here in the patron entry form. George pointed that out to me. We've had some code in place, so I have not gone through here and checked to see the changes that have been made over the years, but he pointed out to me that now email addresses are being validated to make sure that something is properly formed in there. So if I were to put just something random in there, it's already complaining about it. Says, please enter a valid email address. So it's letting me know that I have a bad email address, and it's not letting me save until I have something correct in there. So I'll just put that back the way it was.
Yeah, I think that was a change in the HTML in the HTML standards. If you have an input type, and if you have an input and you give it the type email, then HTML automatically validates for the typical parts of an email address,
which is great.
So I think it wasn't as much of an idea that some Koha developer came up with. It was an idea that the people that did the standards for HTML made a modification there at the basic HTML level.
Yeah. So, there are some improvements that are being made along the way, as we get further and further into HTML and Koha itself, but still some things that we can improve on. So the first thing that I want to point out, let me go over to my code. So we're not going to do all of this today, but you can have quite a lengthy amount of code just for validation, and this is basically our validation segment that we have here. And I will point out a few key things that in the structure here. We have a message that we're going to display when you try to save your information, and so we start out with a blank message, and as it goes through validating different pieces, it will add to that message. So it'll add components of a message where it's trying to remind us about spaces or formatting or such. So it'll add to that variable message. And then we'll also grab different components that we're checking against. So we're setting variables against different fields that we're checking. We'll have regexes that we use to do a lot of this validation. So I have some case-sensitive regexes, and I have some case-insensitive regexes that we'll validate against. And then,
now, this is not for my benefit, but it's a question that occurs to me somebody might have. What is regex?
Regex is short for, I think, regular expressions.
Yeah.
And if you search for regex, and I'll add some links to the video and post this, linking to some sources. But regex is just basically looking for patterns in whatever you're testing against to see if there's a match, or if there's not a match in some cases. So
see if when I think of what some people might think of as matching is like you're matching letter for letter, number for number, uppercase A with an uppercase A.
And in some cases,
regex
you can do that.
Yeah, and regex can do that, but it can also match patterns. So it can
Right.
say, like, that's how it matches for email. It knows that there's supposed to be something followed by an @ symbol, followed by something else, followed by a dot, followed by .com or .org, or, you know, it
Or
knows
something,
what's
yes.
supposed to be there. And
Right.
so it can match against a pattern rather than matching against an exact an exact match.
And regex is really great, but it also can be a little tricky.
Yeah.
There are a lot of nuances to using regex. So we'll include a source, some materials that you can look at to brush up on regex, and also an online tester, which is really handy. I use it all the time to test my patterns to see if it's coming up with the results that I want, and then incorporate that into my code. But regex has been very handy for validation. So you'll define some patterns to test against, and then you'll actually do your tests. If it doesn't pass your test, then we add to the message, you know, telling it what the problem is. So I've got lots of tests here that I test fields for. And then down towards the bottom, we have where it displays the alert. So it basically puts an alert modal on the screen telling you that message that you've built based off of the different results of your tests. And then at the very bottom, I have where we've changed the save button, and that's key to this. And we're going to start off with that. So let me copy this code, and we're going to go over to here. Now, the save button, if you inspect it, it's important we have to modify the save button for one reason we have to modify the save button is it doesn't have all the components I need in order to disable the button to trap those validations. I need something to trigger the event to say, hey, validate and check this information, and then put up the alert and prevent it from submitting if it isn't validated. If it isn't valid. So I've had to modify the save button. So currently on the save button, let's see here, where is it? It's right here. So here's the save button that we have in place. And this has changed a bit from the 3.x version of Koha, because in the past, when we would save, the button was just in the form, and if you scrolled, it would go off the page. And at some point, they incorporated the floating confirmation buttons, the save and cancel buttons, so that it stays on the screen no matter where you are in the form, which is nice, but we had to make modifications for that small change. So we have the save button here, and what we're doing is we're adding some elements to it. We're hiding the save button, or in this case, in our case, we're actually deactivating it so that it doesn't work until validation is passed. But we have some elements that are changed on here. So we're replacing it with we've got a name called validate that's associated with it, and we're incorporating an on click. And one reason I've replaced the button instead of adding these elements. I tried adding these elements in the past, and I wasn't able to actually modify the existing button, which is really strange. I don't know if it had something to do with when it was constructed in the code generation, but I was having trouble with just adding these elements to an existing button. So I ended up using a replace with to replace the button. I rebuilt the button based on what was already there, and then I added the elements that I needed. So that is the first thing that we're going to add. So I am going to go over to our jQuery. that piece in there. I'll save that. And now if I, so here's our button here. It doesn't have that name and it doesn't have that on click. I'm going to refresh this screen now and we'll inspect the button that is there. And now we have it with the validate name and we have it with the on click function. So it's going to return a function called Patron validate. Now, if I use this now, it's going to
Nothing's going to happen.
Nothing's going to happen because
you haven't created that function yet.
Correct. So the next thing I have to do is I have to find that function. So here's the first part of the function here. I'm not going to, well, I'll copy the whole section here. And let's see here, it ends, well, actually, no, I'm not going to copy the whole thing because the whole function is basically all of it.
Yeah.
So I'll just copy the top of it. So we have to define the function. And of course, I like to define these things. Oh, let me put this in the right place here. I like to define these things before you actually have an on-click. So I have an on-click that is asking for this validation. So it's always a good idea to define that function before you have buttons that call for it, because if it isn't completed and you click on that, for some reason, if you have slow bandwidth and you click on that and that function hasn't been defined yet, then you could run into some problems. So always define your functions before you define where it can be accessed. So I'm going to put a function in here and I'll go ahead and put my close. Let's see. Here. No, not doing that. That's right. Okay. So there's the close of the function. So defines Patron validate as a function, and then we're going to define what that all does. And that basically it's going to define all the gets of our function now. One of the last things that it needs to do is it needs to submit the form. So we have to make sure that at least that functionality is in there. So, you know, as is right now, it doesn't do anything. So
I think you need a little more.
No, this is for the alert here, but
okay.
This part right here submits the form. So I'm going to put that in the function at least.
Okay. I think you're still missing part. Because that was part of an if-else, that's the second part of an if-else statement.
It may be, yes. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. So it at least needs to submit the form. So if I save it as is, we don't need to inspect that at the moment. So let's refresh. So my modified save button is here. And if I click it, it should save. So now it works just like it always has, but now we can add other functionality to that function in order to accomplish some things. So we're going to start off with some basic structure here. So one of the first things that we need to do is we need to define a variable that will hold the whatever message it needs to, you know, shoot back. Like you've got spaces here, or you've got, you know, this in here, it shouldn't be in here. So
right.
We're going to define that variable. So I'll copy that over. And that's not going to do anything just yet. Now we need to define some variables that we're going to check. And right now, I'm going to get my variable section of where I link up variables with specific fields. And right now we're only going to focus on the surname. So I'm going to grab that for today's video. Formatting here. So this is just creating a variable called surname, and it is grabbing the information or the text that is in the surname field and putting it in that variable so that we can look at
so
it.
You can test it.
Yeah. And then we're going to create our regexes. And right now, I like to have my remarks in here so we remember. Other fingers there. Come on. Why isn't it copying? I like to have I like to have remarks in here so that I know what's where, what the code is about, why it's there. So we're going to create some regexes. And
the people, if you ever die or quit, the people that follow you will be really happy if you have data there, if you have comments.
Exactly.
Because there's nothing worse than looking at a system and having a whole bunch of jQuery and not one single comment that tells you what any of it is.
So I've got two variables with regexes in them. These are case insensitive. This first one is checking for spaces. Now I can deal with spaces in a couple ways. This is looking for basically leading and trailing spaces. I could have used a trim on this and just cut it out completely. And at some point I may just consider doing that. But I figure if the staff are regularly doing this, if they're copying things from one place to another, sometimes you'll get spaces in there. And I want staff to be in the habit of, entering things correctly, even in places where I'm not validating. So this helps me build in a good habit for the staff by, pointing out, hey, you've got spaces at the beginning or the end of this field. So they need to be able to, it gets them on point to watch for these kinds of things rather than just relying on the program to do it itself.
Right.
So the first regex is looking for spaces. The second one, and I define these separately because I can reuse the space reg against several fields, not
against
just
multiple fields, right?
This one. So I have the space reg. Now I have a surname reg, which is looking to see if they're actually using letters and not numbers in a name. They're not putting some weird characters in the name. So the only thing that I'm allowing in the field is letters, and then a hyphen or an apostrophe, because you have names like O'Brien, or you have hyphenated last names. And so it's just making sure that all of this is kosher for a last name, what should be in the last name and what shouldn't.
So if Prince was still alive, he would have trouble getting a library card at your library, right?
Maybe. Or we could adjust for that.
You can adjust specifically for Prince. Okay.
Yes. So yeah. So those are the two tests that I'm doing on this particular case today. So that's going to grab those variables. Now I have to actually perform the test. So I've got a section down here that does the validation. So I'm going to grab these two tests. So we've defined the regexes. Now we're going to test against those regexes. So
for this demo today, you're only defining two regexes, though.
Correct.
Okay.
So this if statement is going to test for invalid characters. And then it's going to have another test that tests for the space.
Okay.
See if there's any spaces in it. And that should be.
Well, you don't have.
Okay. that should be it, but it'll test, but nothing's going to happen with that message. I'm defining a message, I'm adding to the message. So it's testing this. If it's not passing this test, meaning that this particular variable, so here's the variable that I'm testing, and here's the test I'm testing against. So this apostrophe says if it doesn't pass, then do this. So it's checking to make sure if it doesn't pass, to add to the message. And so here's the test, the variable with the regex, and I add the dot test to test against this field. So that's the basic structure there. And if it doesn't pass, it's going to take that message variable and it's going to add to it, because I could have, you know, several things go awry in one form. So it's going to take that message. The message is going to equal itself plus this. It's going to add last name contains invalid characters. I'm adding a break so that it goes to another line in the message. So that's what those slash ends are for.
Right.
So it's not all one big sentence or smashed together paragraph.
So you have separate lines in the
message. Yes, makes it easier to read. So it tests the surname against the proper characters. Excuse me. And then it's going to test the surname against the space test to see if there's extra spaces. And if there are, it's going to add a message. A space has been found at the beginning or end of the field.
Okay.
So it'll do that.
And how does it know if it needs to pop up that message then?
So then at the very end of our function, after all its testing, there was another if statement. So this is where you were talking about
the if else.
Yes, the if else. So we're going to add this condition here that will display the alert. So I'm going to add this, and then I'll have to modify what I put in there. So this is going to display the alert. Let me fix my formatting. Some of this is left over before they added all this great formatting. So if the message does not have is not empty, if there's something in the message, it's going to throw up the alert with the text.
Right.
Otherwise, it's going to return false.
And I think you need an extra closing bracket.
So it's doing that if, else it'll do this. It'll do this if. And then, of course, because that is nested in there, I have to close that one. So it's closing that else. So if it's not blank, it's going to display that alert, and that's all it's going to do, and it'll return false, meaning it's not going to submit the form.
Right.
Otherwise, it will submit the form. So if it is blank, that's all it's going to do is just submit the form. So those are our conditions for the validation. And that should be it. So I'll save those changes. There we go. Took a while. Let's refresh the screen. So now, if my surname starts with a space, and you can see how easy it is to not see that space, I'm going to save, and it's going to pop up this message: last name contains invalid characters. A space has been found at the beginning or end of the field. So basically, it's telling me, it's an invalid character. It's not one of the characters that is defined. So, but specifically, it's saying a space has been found. So that's why I put that in parentheses there. But let me click OK. So it didn't submit the form. I'm going to save it without the space, and it works.
Perfect.
If I do something weird, like I put some other character in there, I'm going to say save. Last name contains invalid characters. Okay, that wasn't acceptable. So, but maybe Their name is Oh Frosty. You know, with the apostrophe. Let's see if that works. It's not complaining, and it saved it. So it is allowing the apostrophe, and if I have a hyphenated name, boy, I've got butterfingers today. So if I use a hyphenated name, that works as well.
Cool.
If I have a space at the end, you know, you can't see that. Again, it's going to point that out. So I'll have to find that nasty space and get rid of it. So now we have a surname that is being validated. And I don't think in this validation, I think this we can do in another episode. It doesn't validate whether or not it's capitalized or not. I do have that in our system. Some people may or may not want to go that far, but you know, this gives us a good beginning of validation. I don't think this test tests against caps either. Yeah. So, you know, obviously there are still some things that we can do for validation, but again, this is just a beginning, and we're going to talk about more validation, what other things we can do to improve our consistency and the way we want information entered in our Patron data as we go.
Yeah, you should be able to set up a pattern to match any field that you're dealing with, and make it, you know, whatever you want it to be. If you want phone numbers to be in a specific format, you can do that.
Yeah.
That was one of the things when I was using validation in my last job. That was one of the things that we had it doing, was making sure that all phone numbers had 3 digits, a dash, 3 more digits, a dash, and then the final 4 digits. And then I was able to write that validation so that that had to be there, or it had to say no phone, or it had to say disconnected, but then anything could come after those. So I could set it up. It didn't have to be exactly 10 digits with the dashes. It could be 10 digits with the dashes. And then after that, you could put an extension number, or you could put leave in parentheses, you could write messages, or, you know, you could add anything after the part that I wanted to validate.
Right. And phone numbers were especially tricky because there are so many different formats for phone numbers. Some people put the hyphens, some people use periods, some people don't put anything at all in between the numbers. I really hate that because those are harder to read.
And we had people that had to read them off of a printed receipt, you know, in like 8-point font.
Yeah.
And it just made it easier when they were all exactly the same instead of 10 digits in a row. Or some people would put parentheses around the area code.
Right.
You know,
some people would enter area code. Some people would put the 1 before the area code.
Right.
Yeah.
And just using the validation to make it all consistent really helped a lot of people, especially that job was in Idaho, where now you have to dial every phone number you call in the state has to have all 10 digits.
Right.
In order to make a proper phone call.
And, you know, it was important for us too, because I've actually made some modifications, and maybe we'll do this in another video at some point, but I've made some modifications where we do SMS, and you have to enter a phone number, and I have a link next to the SMS field where you enter the phone number for texting, where you can actually copy the phone number into that field. But that phone number has to be entered a very specific way for the SMS field. It has to be entered with a +1 and then all the digits without any hyphens or spaces or anything in there. So basically, you know, if they know that that's the number that they want to use for SMS, they can copy it. What it'll do is it'll copy that into that field, and because it's properly formatted, it knows to strip all the hyphens out of there and add a +1 in front of it and put it in that field. So it makes it really easy for them to enter that SMS number if they've already entered it in the phone number field to begin with. So
Cool.
So yeah, the validation really helps to streamline some processes down the road. Even if you're not using that at this point, make sure, if you do it now, you won't have to go back and clean it up later, which is really nice. So that is it for this week, and we will continue on the series. We'll show some other validations that we can do on our patron entry form in upcoming episodes.
Cool. I look forward to that. Maybe I'll find a way I'll bring myself to start using it again. I don't remember. There was some specific reason I didn't want to use it here. So maybe
it really helps if all of your libraries are doing the same thing. If everybody has a different way of doing things, if the patron data entry is not consistent among all your libraries, then that becomes a problem. That becomes an issue.
And I think that is one of the issues that I had.
But if there are consistent pieces, if there are consistent things between all of your libraries, like phone numbers have to be formatted this way, you can at least do that. You can at least validate and push for consistency in the areas that are consistent among all your libraries.
I think that was one of the big reasons. Is I think we have one library where they don't use any phone numbers. It's a school library.
And
and so I think I remember that being an issue, is that I would need to write the validation in such a way that phone numbers weren't required at that place at all. So
right. And the validation doesn't necessarily require the validation that we're using doesn't make the field a requirement. So
right.
It just checks it.
Yeah.
So anyway,
it's been long enough ago that I don't remember why I didn't want to use it here. So maybe it's time to revisit that. Start
tinkering with it.
Yeah. Start breaking things again.
All right. Well, we'll see everybody again in 2 weeks. Oh, don't forget, if you enjoy our videos, please go to our YouTube channel. I believe it's youtube.com/koha-US, no hyphen. Is that correct?
I think so.
Okay, but look for koha-US on YouTube at the very least, and subscribe to our playlist. We have a playlist specifically for these videos. You can subscribe to them. You can like our videos. Let us know that you're enjoying our videos at the very least by liking them there, or comment on them. You can't do that on koha-US.org. But you can do that on our YouTube channel, and we'd like to have feedback about what you think about our videos. If you have questions, if you found errors, if you found ways to improve things, or if there's a particular topic that you would like, feel free to comment. But check us out on YouTube, and we'll see everybody in 2 weeks.
See you later.